Last time on Backtalk with Cripple3030.
No, they just cracked the cell every shift.
And then beat you inside the cell?
Unmercifully.
With using the nightsticks or just their hands?
Straight hands.
Okay. With their gloves, right?
With their gloves.
Right, because they had them famous gloves they
yes,
wear,
the
right?
famous gloves.
Right.
The famous ones. They even beat me up in the infirmary. I tried to tell, like, they beating on me, lady. The lady told on me. They came in there and beat me, yes.
Right, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, the nurse.
So you was actually talking to the nurse?
Yes, they beating on me, lady. She looking at the bruises and shit.
Yeah.
They had me pissing blood for 2 days.
So then, and first of all, the reason that happened, it started because you
accidentally hit the
officer.
That he was accidentally.
And then, so he continued the problem
yes.
going for 30 days straight, him and his cronies.
Yeah, yes, every shift.
Patriotism. It inspires passionate debate. It's worn like a badge of honor with good reason, because it means love and devotion for one's country. But what really makes up this country of ours? It's the people. To love America is to love all Americans. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, sexuality, disability, race, religion, and other labels. Because love has no labels.
How you doing? This is Cripple3030. I'm about to interview Robert Diaz Jr., a.k.a. Robbie Newborn. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, my brother. It's good to see you, man.
I want to give them a little synopsis of you before we even start the interview.
Okay.
I wonder if you could give them like a small biography of what you're doing.
Okay.
What you're about.
Well, I'm a CEO, president of a support service called Walk It Out Recovery Services. I'm also a minister. I do evangelism through Christian hip hop, which is, I go by the name of Robbie Newborn.
Gotcha.
And I'm in the Berks County area, which is near Reading in PA. I've been doing this for about good 7-8 years almost. As a drug and alcohol therapist, a mental health therapist. Now they like to call it co-occurring specialist. I do a lot of outreach and community service. I have this motto that there's hope for the hopeless. I really like to reach out to the still sick and suffering addict. Teens, young adults. Meet them where they are. Because I know that when I came up in a dysfunctional family setting, it was rough for me. So I felt that God, my high power, gave me something to give back to the community. So for me, that's true ministry, giving back. I'm out and about in the community with young transitional age, 16 to 26, young adults that have mental illness with drug addiction, and the program is called the ACT team. And with that, we help the individual integrate back into the community. I went into a program called Teen Challenge, and that was where my discipleship started. And I like to say that's where Robbie Newborn came about. Through that ministry, I learned evangelism. I learned that community outreach was more than just community outreach. It was more ministry. And through that discipleship, being a man of God, knowing that, my high power Jesus, he taught us that the word wasn't for us, it was for the common man. And the common man was the one who was suffering, the orphans, and such, and the children. And, growing up in addiction and growing up in that hostile environment, I felt that God gave me that. That was my calling. So, when I was in school, I started with my capstone, and I created a program called Walk It Out, peer mentoring program for youth in school. So it was a recovery-based mentorship, peer-to-peer mentoring program that the student body could utilize to help each other.
When you mention, when you say school, you mean college?
And middle school.
Middle school?
High school and college.
Because now my next question was, because I also want to highlight to them, you've been through some rough patches before all of this, right?
Yes, of course.
You've been in prison.
Yes, I have.
What how long were you in prison?
Well, for a stretch, I did a skit bid, 2 years, 2.5 years. But I was in and out of jail, you know. At a very young age, I was in Sparfit, you know. And then, you know, I've been through central booking. You know, I was in the Tombs, not only in the Bronx County, central booking, but I was also in New York City, central booking, Manhattan. Then Rikers Island, of course, you know how that goes.
Right.
C-74 as an adolescent. They like to say C-74 adolescents at war, you know. I was there, and then I went upstate, and I did several different places I was in, you know.
So how many times were you incarcerated?
I was incarcerated about 3 times.
About 3 times?
Yeah, about 3 times.
Averaging about how long each time?
I say about, altogether, I probably did 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you say you went from Rikers Island about what year?
Rikers Island, I went into Rikers Island in 90.
1990?
And, yeah, and then I went back in 91.
Okay.
And then from 91, I came out in 93.
Okay.
I went upstate, then I came out in 93. And how I did that was actually a blessing in disguise, because at the time I didn't even think I was going to get accepted. My crime was a violent crime. I had loaded, you know, I shot at somebody with a gun,
right.
And so they had me as a attempt murder, and it was like reckless endangerment with intent to harm another,
right.
And possession, and so they actually dropped it down because my youthful offender record was sealed, so they couldn't try to place that on me, else I would have been a persistent, you know, because my first charge.
Because you was a minor.
I was 15 when I got busted at the high school, Morris High School, with a gun.
Okay.
You know, and that's when I got, you know, locked up the first time. And then, well, you know, when I did some time for that, then I was put on probation. And then, so then after that, at this point, I was 17. Then I got convicted at 18, but they convicted me as an adult. So it was sealed.
So now for these convictions, right, you say you did time first at Rikers Island, and then you went upstate.
Yeah, went upstairs. So when it comes to my juvie was different from then adolescent. Then when I did my actual state bid was when I was, 18.
So you would say in 1990, 1991,
92, 93.
93, you was in Rikers Island.
1990, I was in Rikers. I came out.
Right.
And then in 91, I went back in for my second charge. And then that's when, in 92, when I hit my 18, when I was like 18, they convicted, I plead, and they hit me, so then they sent me upstate.
What, do you remember, you could remember what happened to you?
I remember
right?
a lot of stuff, yeah.
All right. So, do you remember the programs they were offering then?
So what I was gonna say was, so when in '89, when I had got busted for the gun in Morris High School, and by that time 90 came in, I was on the island, and when I came out, so because I had a violent case charge, they when they sent me up, they had a program called ASAT KSAT. Now I didn't think I was going to get accepted to either or,
right.
But what happened was that because I was under the influence of alcohol and drugs, when the crimes happened, they put me in ASAC as a drug program, right? And then, and of course, I pleaded not guilty to all the other charges, so they dropped it down to a possession with intent to hurt somebody.
Right.
So anyway, so when they did that, because I was under the influence, they had scheduled me as a what is it, medium A, right, medium A, and
medium A, like your security status.
Right, medium A security status,
right, your security classification,
right, classification. That's the word I was looking for, classification, medium A. But through the medium A, then they wound up putting me as an ASAC to take ASAC programs, like drug programs. Right. So then they had a program called KSAC. So by the time that happened, I was already upstate. I went to Ulster. You know, then from Ulster, they had me in Auburn, they had me in Livingston, they had me in Mount McGregor, Cayuga.
So the ASAP program that you did, and then the KSAP
program. It was in Mount McGregor,
was
ASAP.
Was that during your last bit?
Yeah, that was the last.
How about your first bit?
The first bit, nah, I ain't do none of that,
man.
Nothing. I was running crazy as an adolescent in C-74.
So right, so then you came home from C-74 during your
Yeah,
first bit?
so in '89, when I got out of the tombs, I was home. So then I had to go back to court,
right.
And that's when I went to the island. And then from the island, I got art, and I came out. But while I was on, then they gave me probation. They wound up being probation. In that time, about a year later or so, 2 years maybe, I was 17. I went downtown and I got into a scuffle with this dude in a store, and that's when I had my gun on me and I shot at the dude. And so me running in the street, still with the gun in my hand, by the time I got to like 28th Street by Madison Square Garden, they stopped me, bang. It was like the movies, bro, for real. And so from that time when they locked me up, it was when they had me for that charge. And so for that charge, for that possession of a weapon is when I went back to the island and going back in and out to go to court to try to fight it, and wind up, my lawyer was able to drop it down to a possession with reckless endangerment.
So now, during your first bit, when you were first incarcerated, right? The first day that you was in jail, right? Do you remember how you felt inside when you first knew that you was there?
Well, I could tell you this much. When I was in the bullpens, I had the fresh New Balance white. And I remember it was these two dudes in the other cell, and they were like, yo, we got to know each other, right? And they were like, yo, the only thing you got to worry about, don't even worry about nothing. You short, they ain't going to mess with you. But those sneakers, you're going to have to fight for them.
We'll be back with more from our guests when we return. Don't go anywhere.
I believe in nature.
I believe in the spirit.
I believe in trust.
Beauty.
I believe in my mom.
Strawberry ice cream.
Fortune cookies.
Chocolate.
I believe in
the tooth fairy.
Being honest with yourself.
I believe in Santa Claus.
Aliens, of course. I believe what I want to believe.
I believe in myself.
I believe in myself. I believe in peace.
Tell you this much. When I was in the bullpens, I had the fresh New Balance white. And I remember it was these two dudes in the other cell, and they were like, yo, we got to know each other, right? And they were like, yo, the only thing you got to worry about, don't even worry about nothing. You short, they ain't going to mess with you. But those sneakers, you're going to have to fight for them. And I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. You know, I basically was fronting. I was trying to act tough.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But lo and behold, you know what I'm saying, the same thing that they told me was the opposite. Of course, they try to get me for my sneakers, right. But it wasn't even the sneakers. It was short didn't mean nothing.
Right.
Everybody wanted to test me because, you know, they want to show that they're Mr. Big Stuff, or, right. You know, like they got a rep, so they want to pick on somebody just so I had to fight. So from that bullpen, when I went to the tombs, is when I had to really, you know, that was the first time that I experienced having to go through that like that. You know what I'm saying? And it was those white New Balance that I had on, and, you know, yo, shorty, what's up? You know what I'm saying? And so I had to show that, you know, but of course, my heart was beating.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? When SparFit, I was young, man. You know what I'm saying? Right. I was like, what, 14 maybe? You know what I'm saying? 13, 14. So it was a different whole thing. I mean, you young, you juvenile like that. It ain't as bad. And I'm not saying SparFit was a cake, because SparFit was wild too. It was like a mini C-74.
Right.
But at that point, you know, when I got there, you know, like I was a little older, you know, I had my toughness and all that. But when I got tested, you know, that to me, it was real at that moment. So my heart was beating, but I knew that I had to stand.
So did you fight?
Of course I did.
So so you kept the sneakers?
Of course I did.
Did you have to fight repeatedly for them?
Well, after that, when they saw my heart, it wasn't as much because I started to gain respect. You know, a lot of the older dudes, you know what I'm saying? They, you know, be like, yo, come, you know, we chilling, you know what I'm saying? Take me under the wing and all that. You know, I was young, they were older, and they liked my style, you know. They liked my heart, you know. But of course, dudes that were my age, you know what I'm saying, of course, they want to test me because they want to make a rep. And so there was, you know, so really, man, I'll tell you, my worst experience was Rikers Island, man. Rikers Island, man. Bro, I got fought for the jack.
For the phone.
For the phone.
Right, so the viewers could know.
Right. Back in the days.
We know it as the jack.
Right.
But now, just to clarify, because if people know about Rikers Island today, they won't know about back then if they don't.
Okay.
Because back then, the phones were free, right?
Yeah, they used to hang. Used to hang on the right. It wasn't, the COs used to take them out off the line, put them in the bubble, and when it was phone time, they used to click them up. You know what I'm saying?
And there was no 5-minute limits, none of that.
Well, there wasn't. The
limits came from prisoners.
Exactly.
The prisoners is the ones that put the limit.
Right.
But the correction officers didn't have nothing to do with it. They didn't run the phones.
Nope.
Nothing. They left it to the
to the prisoners, the inmates, y'all.
Right. So now, what I want to do is I'm trying to give a picture. To the viewers who may not have been there. Right. So now, there's about 30 people in the dorm, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it was more because at that point it was overpopulated. They had adults in C-74.
Okay.
Not with the adolescents, but they were in different housing.
Right?
Different housing. Yeah.
Right. So now, in the adolescent dorm, right? You're in the adolescent dorm. What dorm were you in?
When I first went in, they had me in Mod 5 as reception. Right. And then when I hit population, I was in Murder Mod 9.
The worst, one of the worst mods.
Yeah, and you don't come out. You was in.
You was in the Bronx side or on the Brooklyn side?
I got jumped in the Brooklyn Queens side.
Okay.
And I wound up in the Bronx side.
All right. Just so you know, I know because I was there in 1992.
Okay. So you was there. 93, you was there when I went up.
Right. So it was pretty much almost the same right after you left. So you had the Bronx side and you had the Brooklyn side. I could throw names who might have been running it, but we're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that.
But the idea is when you went in, it's a dorm full of 30 people, right?
Yeah.
So when you went in with your bedding, right? You had your blanket, you had your sheets, right? You had your whatever clothes you had on, your little toiletries they gave you in the reception, right?
Yep.
What was your feeling inside when you first walked into the? Matter of fact, not even when you walked in the dorm. Let's talk about the Seagate, right?
When I came out of Seagate.
Because they was both staring at you through that window, right?
Of course. One side here, one side there, north and south side.
Right, and they both staring to see which side you're going on, right?
That's right. And the crazy thing is that on the south side, I think it was the south side it was the right and the left, all my peeps from the Bronx were there.
Right, that's the Bronx side.
And then on this side, it was Brooklyn mixed with Brooklyn and Queens.
The left was the north, the south was the right.
Right.
And then
so coming down that corridor, because you had Mod 7, Mod 8, Mod 9.
Right.
You come down, boom, it was like that. And then when you came down Mod 9, it was a long corridor. Right. And then you see all the guys standing up on the window, the bubble.
What was your feeling inside?
My heart was pumping, man.
You were scared?
Yeah, I was.
You was a kid. So
I was,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and
how
I already
knew again?
What happened?
About how old were you?
When I was there, 17.
You were 17 in that Seagate, right?
Because the first time I was like 16 and I came out and I went,
So you was about 17?
17, yeah.
In that Seagate, watching these people looking at you like a piece of cattle, right? That's basically what they were looking at, right? And you already know from experience after you went into the dorm, they was looking to see what clothes they was going to take from you, right?
That's right.
They was already claiming your clothes.
They was already looking at me to let me know what was going on.
Right.
Now, let me tell you this, though. So when I was in Mod 5, you come in, you got that little what they call an intake, right? You in like a bullpen. Right. You come down, boom, you come. Bro, I can remember in my head. You come down along, then you make a left. You go down. Mod 5 was next to the. Well, now I don't know if they still have them, but the sprungs were outside.
Yes. Yes.
Mod 5 at the time was a reception area.
Right.
So it all started in Mod 5, bro. Let's even come back. Because in Mod 5 is where it was worse. You know what I'm saying? Because Mod 5 is where I first had to fight for the jack.
Right.
Mod 5 is where dude tried, you know, he tried to house my stuff. Dude was big.
Try to steal your stuff.
He tried to steal my stuff. And it was, and back then, it was like, it was either you were black or you were Spanish, Puerto Rican.
Right.
And unless you grew up in the same hood, y'all weren't friends.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's how it was when I was there, and it was boroughs against boroughs.
Right.
It wasn't, you know, gangs against gangs then.
Right.
You had 5%ers, you had Latin Kings, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Which, you know, at one time were the biggest in the whole system.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then, but really, like, we used to call them cocoros or tlepapalos or zapatos, right? And I'll be like, oh, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, because they used to say that the black brothers were the bullies, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, this sounds a little segregated to me, right?
Right.
So when I go in there, they used to call me German. And I was like, what are you calling me a German for?
Right.
You know, so the dude from Queens in Rockaway, he was from Rockaway. I'm on the phone talking to my cousin, and he grabs the jack, the cord. And I'm thinking I'm on the phone talking, and when I look, the dude's like, get off the phone. Bro, I closed my eyes and just turned around with the phone in my hand and just bang, right in his face.
Right.
Pushed him. We went over the bed. And I ain't gonna front. This dude was so big, he grabbed me, had me on the floor, and was decking me in my face. One of the dudes said, nah, that's enough. Y'all do 5 in the back. Right. And I did my 5.
5 minutes.
5 minutes in the back.
In other words, y'all shot the
boom,
fifth.
boom, boom.
Right.
Now, let's finish all that. I get out of Mod 5, I'm going to Mod 9. Dude had left already, so I don't know where he went and popped dog, right? I come down, I'm going to Mod 9. Who do I see on the window? The dude that I had the same dude. So he don't know that the dudes that are with him are my boys.
Okay.
He just looking at me like, yeah, you coming in here, I'm going to get you.
You going to his house.
So that's when my heart was beeping. I was like, nah, I got to do this again, bro.
Right.
Now, I'm going to tell you what happens. I get to the other side and go to that side.
Right.
I'm chilling. They put me on the Brooklyn and Queens. I say Queens because the dude, one of the dudes that was running that house was from Queens.
Right, but let's clarify, because back then, even Queens had, maybe you could count.
Right, it wasn't much.
Of how many people was actually getting busy, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Right. So it was really Brooklyn.
No disrespect, but that's just what it was.
That's what it was. That's what it was. So, so me and my boy that I grew up with in Millbrook, we wound up going in the same side.
Right.
So I was like, look, we don't know nobody here. I got your back, you got my back. So so when we get in there, child comes, we chilling. You know, we're like, yo, so the dorm was like this, beds were like this, right? You had a middle and you had the ends, right? So the ones in the middle, I sat with my head on this side, he sat with his head on this side. Next thing I know, the dude's getting dragged out his bed.
The guy that you...
My boy.
Right.
I'm like, yo, what's going on? So my boy goes to fight the dude and they jump him. So I jump, I'm on top, I'm jumping on the beds like this, hopping, and I just did it at loco. You know what I'm saying? And boom, the whole house jumped us, man. They jumped us, they beat us down.
Just to clarify, it was 30 people.
Yeah.
Right? So including you and your man.
Right.
So you getting jumped by about 20-something people.
It was
about.
I mean, you know, I'd say the whole dorm, but it probably was less than that.
But 9 times out of 10, it was the whole dorm.
Yeah, the whole dorm.
Because that's actually the way it was.
That's how it was.
Whoever actually didn't jump later on, they would get ran out.
They would get ran out, or they, exactly.
Right. This I know, you know what I'm saying? But I just want to clarify for them.
Right, because they try to do that to me on the other side.
So now, hold on. We're going to go to a break.
Okay.
Right? And after the break, we're going to go into what happened when you went to the other side.
Okay.
We'll be back with more from our guests when we return. Don't go anywhere.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
And now for a highlight on a local Bronx business.
This is Cripple3030. I'm about to go in here to 604 East 141st Street and speak to the director of Graffiti2 Ministries. Talk about all the programs that they service the community with.
My name is Andrew Mann. I'm the director of Graffiti2 Community Ministries and the pastor of Graffiti2 Baptist Church. We've been serving the Mott Haven neighborhood of the South Bronx for about 14 years now. We serve the community through programs for kids, teenagers, families. We have after-school programs for kids and teenagers, summer programs like sports camps, football, baseball, tennis, soccer. We provide positive activities for the kids to be plugged in. And all those programs, we really work on growing students holistically, hopefully serving them mind, body, and soul.
For more on this Bronx-based organization and its programs, go to graffiti2ministries.org.
How you doing? This is Cripple3030. In case you missed it, we actually in the middle of the interview with Robert Diaz Jr., aka Robbie Newborn. So before the break, right?
Yeah.
We were actually talking about what occurred to you when you went to Mar 9
right.
on Rikers Island. You actually, just to recap a little bit, you said that and because you were supporting your friend who was actually going to get jumped on,
right.
you got involved into
right.
the fight. And as a result, you had about 20-something people
right.
who jumped you. As a result, they moved you to the other side, though,
well,
right?
not right away.
Okay.
So what happened was, after that happened, in fact, one of the dudes, he came up to me, and I didn't recognize him at the time. I knew him from uptown in the Bronx.
Okay.
We used to feed this dude. He was homeless dude, and we used to help him. I didn't realize who he was until he came up and said, yo, you know, I didn't have nothing to do with that. I said, yo, yes, you did. I ain't going to forget.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So then after that, later, we had the dinner chow.
Right.
And the dudes were like, yo, y'all got heart. Y'all got heart, man. Yo, for real. So dudes try to son us, like they try to make us their soldiers.
Right.
And I was like, nah, man, it ain't going down like that. I ain't trying to hear that. So me and my boy, we stood together. So now the dudes on the other side, I know them, so I'm in the, in the window, and I'm letting them know what happened. You know what I'm saying? They're like, yo, don't worry about it. You know, I could tell that they're telling me don't worry about it. They're like, yo, we're going to get you over here.
So now the window, just so
right.
they could understand, right? Like the door.
The door, and
you got the door, and then you got a big, large plastic window that
right.
you could actually see the other side of the door, right? And then you was talking to your friends in the other side,
and then right next to that, each side has the TV room where you used to eat your chow. Right. Right, because we never went out.
Right.
Once in a while. Inside, yeah.
I was in there. So now, so after you told your friends, then you made some moves so you can get on that side.
So I told my boy, I said, yo, everybody from the block is on the other side. You want to go? He was like, nah, I'm good, bud. I was like, you want to go? Go ahead. I said, I don't want to leave you here, though, man. Let's go over there, man. We'll, we're here. We might as well go with our boys. We'll be chilling.
Right.
So he was like, nah, you go if you want. I said, no doubt. Establish what you got here. I'll be on the other side. So we had a good communication. It wasn't like I was leaving them flat.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But at that time, by that time, a few of the dudes that were running that house, they already took a liking. You know what I'm saying? So we told them we ain't just soldiers. You know what I'm saying? But we ain't afraid to fight.
So it's like you made your bones.
Right.
In other
but
words, right?
I'm going to tell you, before that transaction happened, this was my experience with the Ninja Turtles. So
Just to clarify, the Ninja Turtles is the squad of the guards,
squad,
right? The correction officers, right? They actually called them Ninja Turtles because they look like
they look with that gear
when
that
they had
have
their gear and stuff, right?
So, because I know the purpose of this is talk about the corruption and how they abuse the inmates. So I believe this was abuse.
Well, just to clarify, I want to talk about everything.
Okay.
As long as it's real.
All right.
As long as I don't want to hear when no bodies is buried and nothing.
No.
We don't do the ratting thing. That's
no.
But yeah, whatever you give them the view,
like that, yeah.
whatever could give them the view.
Right.
That's what I want to
the view is that the police came in, you know what I'm saying, the Ninja Turtles came in, the correction officers came in, and they had us all stripped because we were fighting. So they came in, you know what I'm saying, they came in with the riot gear and all that. They had us stripped. They told us to kneel down and had us with our hands up and kept us like that. And then one of them came in with some kind of hose and started hosing us down.
And everybody was butt naked?
The majority was.
All right. So they pretty much, I want to paint the picture, right? So you put your hands behind your heads.
Like this.
Right?
Squat
with
down.
Your elbows closed.
Yep, with your elbows closed.
I remember.
Yep.
So with your elbows closed, and then pretty much y'all either down to your underwears or y'all naked, right?
Yep.
And then you said they sprayed y'all with a hose?
It was like a hose. Yeah, it looked like a hose to me because it was water.
Was it water?
It was water, yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, that's when everything stopped. They shut it down. And then I think a couple of days later is when I went to the other side.
So now my question is, when they sprayed y'all with the water, was it to calm y'all down? Or was it already after the incident was done?
It wasn't to calm us down, man. They
were
came
y'all in the middle of fighting?
We were in the middle of fighting. When they came in, we were in the middle of fighting. We were already, like, they already settled everything. And then
so everybody was already relaxed?
They already had us like this.
Okay.
And that's when they came in. I don't remember how many of them
so
came
already
in.
The situation was already
To me,
rectified.
it was already rectified.
Everybody was already separated.
Yeah.
Nobody was in danger anymore.
Nah.
And then all of y'all majority of y'all was out of clothes.
Yeah.
Right? Y'all was naked.
Yeah.
So y'all not dangerous anymore. But yet they still came in and they wet y'all down with the water hose?
Yep.
Okay.
That was my experience.
So now when you went to the other side, right? What was your feeling now? Obviously you would feel a little bit more happier because you know you got your friends over there. You already made your bones on the other side. Mm-hmm. So now in your mind, I'm assuming you already like, well, I already showed these people I'm not gonna go for this.
Right.
Right. So now when you go to the other side, was it as smooth as you thought it would be?
It was, but they gave me they bust my chops. You know what I'm saying? Like, they wanted me, you know, like you said, somebody come in, you got to break them down, you got to beat them, jump them, you know what I'm saying? And I wasn't with that.
Right.
I didn't want to do that. So they were like, you don't want to jump, then we're going to jump you.
Right.
But because my boys were, were there, they were like, nah, they ain't happening, you know what I'm saying? So I was able to get out of that situation, you know what I'm saying? But the things that I saw that that was happening was, in my mind, I'm like, yo, I can't do that to somebody, you know what I'm saying?
So in other words, you wasn't able to relax.
No, I wasn't.
You still had to sleep with that one eye open.
Of course I did, because I knew that there was going to be somebody who had animosity, thinking that, oh, he think he bad because his people was here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So of course I had one. My thing was, if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to look like I was living on the strength.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that was my experience. And of course, I had boys there, you know what I'm saying? So in my mind, I'm like, so I'm good.
So now, you was there for about a year?
Yeah, and then I went to court. A few of the guys that I was with went up with me. I went to court, and then when I went upstate, I already had passed that. I went upstate and we went to downtown.
So now you went to court, you copped out?
Yeah, I copped out.
So you took a plea bargain so you could get a lighter sentence, right?
Yep.
What was your feeling like when they gave you that sentence?
Well, honestly, I mean, it was a drag because I didn't want to go back to the island, Like, I was like, man, I got to go back there and then, go upstate. That's how I felt. I'll be honest, though, when I went upstate, it wasn't the same feeling that I had when I was in the island.
Did it feel real?
It did.
To you when
Reality,
you was getting your sentence?
Yeah. I actually.
Because even though Rikers Island was a bad place, right? I'm telling you this from experience. To me, it felt like I was 16, 17 years old when I was incarcerated in Rikers Island. So I could pretty much relate.
At the same time, right?
So now, even though it was a bad place, you was fighting, this and that, but could you say that you was having some type of fun at some point?
Sometimes we did.
What did it feel a little fun?
It did.
Okay.
And sometimes because that was the pastime.
But
you locked up.
Was you able to kill time doing that? Like
in some ways, yeah. In some ways.
So now when you go to court though, did it make you like, did the reality smack you in the face and say, yo, listen, now you really got to do time?
Yeah, I mean, it hit me because first of all, when I plead, I already knew what my plea was, so I knew it wasn't going to be that bad compared to what they were trying to offer me. But it hit me because when I looked at my godmother and I looked at my girl at the time, and I knew that I wasn't going to see them again for a little while, and I had to go in that waiting cell to go back to the island, you know what I'm saying, before I went upstate, yeah, I was like, damn. Now it sucked in, and yeah, of course it did, man.
So now you did one bit, then you came home, right? You didn't do no programming.
When I came home, the KSAC program. So what happened was I went and I signed up for the KSAC program just to see if I could get through. And what they said in the orientation was no violent crimes will get accepted. So I told my boy, I said, yo, I came through this for nothing, you know, this orientation, I'm not gonna get it. So he was like, you don't know that. So I had filled out the application and everything, went through that process, and that was in Mount McGregor. So one day I was in GED class, because I programmed. I used to do like the big book, NAAA. I did everything I could because I got tired of the yard. I got tired of, I just wanted to do stuff. And
this is in your last bit?
This was in the same bit I'm talking about, because I went to a lot of different places.
Okay.
Yeah, so what happened was they called me, they was like, Diaz on the pack up. That was, so when I wound up coming home from KSAC, I wound up getting accepted from the program, and that's when I went into Johnstown, Hell Creek. It wasn't Hell Creek at the time, they changed it later.
Right.
But it was Johnstown KSAC program, and that's how I got home earlier.
And that's your last bit?
That was my last bit, yeah.
So when you came home after going through the KSAC program, is that what inspired you to start doing what you're doing now?
Nah, brother, nah. So after that, I was talking to some brothers. Part of that program was a second phase. You had to go through like a transitional living under the corrections. So you have Fed and corrections that ran it. So I went to, they had a second phase, which I went to, and when I went to the second phase, it was like in Brooklyn. It was called Malik Shabazz or something like that. And from there, then they transferred me to another one called Lee Marquise. It was a hotel. However, I was under the corrections through Lincoln work release facility on 110th Street.
Right.
That's where my parole officer was. So I wind up staying on work release because I got hit with a year in the board. So instead of being in those halfway houses, they had me on what they call 5 and 2 or 7 and 0, whatever it was. So I would go home, but I had to report to the work release facility. After I did the extra year, had they hit me with 2 years, I would have went back upstate. But since they only hit me with a year, they left me on work release.
Okay.
Right. So then on work release, when I went to the board, they gave me parole. And I wound up maxing out parole in '96.
So then, what actually motivated you to start doing what you're doing now?
All right, so from '96 to 2008, my life wasn't perfect because I still didn't get it. So I was going through a whole lot of different changes, man. I found my girl and my cousin dead in Millbrook, which threw me back. I started separating myself from my friends in the street. I felt like I couldn't trust nobody anymore. Then other things started happening, and I moved to Brooklyn. And when I moved to Brooklyn, I kind of felt like even though it was a different borough, it was away from the hood, from where I'm from. And I tried to get my life together, and I did. I went to school. I had good jobs. I was marble polisher. Working in the Allied Craftsmen, I was a bricklayers union and all that. I went to school, LaGuardia Community College. Went there from '98 to 2001. I was doing real good, but I still was drinking. I was still hanging out. I was a functional addict, and I was hiding my addiction. People knew that I was drinking, but they didn't know that I was using drugs at the same time. So, and it was out of a lot of depression, man. What I know now, I look back, I was dealing with PTSD, I was dealing with depression, I was dealing with mental illness, but I never got treatment for it. I self-medicated. and it only got worse. So in 2008, all that time, doing things for myself, getting you know, good jobs, office manager for it was a healthcare training center, and then going and becoming a surgical tech, then a medical assistant, you know, and working in the medical field. My addiction still, brother. 2008, I found my uncle dead, and that episode took me, because at that point I was like, how many people in my family am I gonna find dead? You know, so in 2008, my wife at the time, she decided to tell me I gotta go. And so we separated. And I'm thinking in my stinking thinking, I was like, yeah, I'll get away with this again. I've done family interventions and whatever. So we were together, and that point, New Year, she was like, you gotta go. So I left. So 2000, that whole year, I just went out with the races. I was just doing whatever I wanted to do. Lost my job in the hospital 2 times because the union got me another job at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. Lost that job. I tried to sign up for the military, passed the ASVAB test, got high before my physical. Dude told me, don't even come back. We don't accept you, because I was going to get a waiver for my felony.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, whatever.
Because they drug tested
They drug tested me, and it was cocaine in my system, not marijuana like I told him.
Right.
I lied to him. So he said, don't even come back. You know, you got me with this waiver. I was supposed to meet with the master sergeant to do the waiver and do my physical.
Right.
That would have been a whole different story, but that never happened. So by the time the new year came in 2009, I was really like, I was out, man. My family even seen it, you know what I'm saying? Like, I gave up. You know what I'm saying? I was just hanging out all day, every day, all night. You know how it goes.
Right.
One after hour to another, you know what I'm saying? Wake up, 3 days later, you're like, man, is it, you know, it's daylight? You don't even know it's 3 days.
Coming up next on Backtalk.
Yeah. When I got there, Jose, my life changed. I started to be discipled as a man of God. I started to go to classes like I was in college. I got my GED when I was up north, right before I came home in K-Sac. I got my upstate. Right. In Johnstown, I came home with my GED. So, and I had my associate's degree. But when I was there, I was like, yo, this is a different experience. This is, you know, I'm learning about how to live like a man of God. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Next case. The People versus Martin White. Mr. White has been charged with guilty. Next case.
But Your Honor, you haven't heard the charges yet.
Guilty. Next case. Guilty. I've been prison. Guilty. Next case.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. All I did was dance. I was being scouted for a scholarship. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor. If making my detox public is gonna help somebody, I'm all for it. Is there any medicine that I can have right now? I'm cold sweating really bad. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Bringing you the journeys of the local legends that brought us the classic hits of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we relive the moments that shaped a generation.
Mary, when's our next show?
Sunday nights at 8 p.m.
So by the time the new year came in 2009, I was really like, I was out, man. My family even seen it, you know what I'm saying? Like, I gave up. You know what I'm saying? I was just hanging out all day, every day, all night. You know how it goes.
Right.
One after hour to another, you know what I'm saying? Wake up 3 days later, you're like, man, is it, you know, it's daylight? You don't even know it's 3 days.
Right.
So that happened, and one day I heard my godmother, she was like, oh, you a bum, you know, you lose everybody, you ain't got nothing, and this and that, and I started crying, bro. It hit me because when I look back in my life, I grew up, my mother was in addiction, you know what I'm saying? Right on 140, you know how it was.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? She was in addiction. My father died, full-blown, complications of full-blown AIDS. You know, my mother was sick. She was locked up. You know what I'm saying? She came out. She was doing beautifully, Jose. 3 months later, 3 months later, my mother died, right? That's a week after my mother died when I found my girl and my cousin dead in Millbrook. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, in my mind, I was doing, you know, like things were just happening in my life. So I just hit rock bottom,
what was the first thing that you did to help, like, to go towards the path that you in now?
So I picked up the phone and I called my uncle, and I talked to my Uncle Danny. My Uncle Danny used to work for Plomesa.
Okay.
And he was like,
drug
look,
program,
yeah, drug program, right, on Fulton Street.
Right.
And he was like, look, man, I'm gonna get you some help, but do you have insurance? I was like, nah, man, I was supposed to get this job with the mental health, some program out here that I was gonna work for, but I never got it, and I lost my job in the hospital, so I don't have no insurance. So he said, look, let's put you in detox. You can get your Medicaid, whatever, and then we'll put you in Plomesa. I was like, all right, whatever. So while he was trying to help me with that, my Uncle Rodney, who I grew up with, Rodney used to live on Beekman back in the day. We grew up together like brothers, you know what I'm saying? He's my uncle, my father's brother, but he was like my big brother.
Right.
And he was like, yo, forget about that, bro. I got something better for you. I said, what's that? He said, it's a program called Teen Challenge. And he was like, I was like, Teen Challenge? Bro, that sounds like it's for kids. And I started laughing and whatever. He was like, nah, listen. And he broke it down to me. So he was talking about how, you know, remember I used to talk about Nikki Cruz and this and that. And remember that video you saw in the summertime? And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. But it wasn't really clicking, you know what I'm saying? I was just ready to get something. So he says, look, let's make an appointment. But you gotta go. So I said, okay. So I go down there, make a long story short, I go down to Brooklyn and Fulton and Gates. And I'm walking down the street, bro, I'm gonna tell you, man. I'm walking, it says Teen Challenge. I started like bugging out because when I lived in Bushwick, my mother-in-law, my ex-mother-in-law lived on Clinton. And I used to pass this place every day and I didn't know what it was. So it just hit me, man. So when I got there, I did the interview, and the coordinator, the intake coordinator, he was like, after the whole thing, he said, look, you accepted. You know, so I said, cool, so where can I, start? He said, you could come tomorrow. I said, nah, let's try another. It was a Monday. I said, let's try Wednesday. And then he was like, okay. Right, so then I said, nah, you know what? Let's do it Thursday. I'll be back Thursday. And he was like, yeah. I said, look, I'm going to come back. Of course, I was trying to rationalize and get what I want. But anyway, so he said I got accepted. However, before I left, he said, hold up, let me ask you a question. Your family has been involved with religion, Catholic. You live with your uncle, Jehovah's Witness. You had a lot of that influence around you. But do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? And I said, nah, man. I started crying, Jose. And I bawled down like a baby. I accepted Christ in my life. February 16, 2009 was my rebirth, So 3 days later, February 19th is my sober anniversary because I went in, and since then I've never used drugs. I've not relapsed. Nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I went into the program for 4 months. First phase, they had an option of a second month. A second phase where they send you to Pennsylvania. It's called a training center, God's Mountain. So I already knew I needed to get out of New York because I was going to fall back into my old self and my old habits. So I was like, the guys were like, you could stay here for 12 months. Other guys were like, yo, go to the mountain, experience it. So I went the first time to see it. I didn't like it. It reminded me of up north. The second time, I went, they gave me a tour. I felt drawn to it. And when I went up there, I graduated the 4 months. I went to the mountain. It was like June 27th of 2009. I went up. So the rest of the program would have been 8 months to complete the year. When I got there, Jose, my life changed. I started to be discipled as a man of God. I started to go to classes like I was in college. I got my GED when I was up north, right before I came home in K-Sac. I got my upstate, right? In Johnstown, I came home with my GED. So, and I had my associate's degree. But when I was there, I was like, yo, this is a different experience. This is, you know, I'm learning about how to live like a man of God. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
My divorce was going through the process. So I went through the 8 months, but in that process, I learned what ministry was. I was part of so many different ministries. The program mentality from when I was upstate hit me when I was there. All the ministries, prayer chain, one of the choirs, the TC Disciples, which was the one I became one of the leaders of as a graduate staff member, right. Which was the Christian rap ministry. I was in a Christian salsa worship team. I was a conguero for them. You know, they call me Bobby Bongos. And so going through that, and then learning, going into the communities, man, Berks County, I've been to all over Pennsylvania doing fundraising and all that. I was learning. It was a learning experience. By the time I graduated, they had a program called Stay Sharp where you do drug prevention in schools, but it was because of the separation between church and state, you really couldn't minister the gospel, but we could talk about the drug epidemic. Right. And so we done it in prison. So I go to prisons now. I do discipleship or I do drug prevention. You know, I go. And so that's in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, Walk It Out Recovery Services is located in Pennsylvania, but we're mobile. Okay. Yeah, I'll get to that. So when through that process, what I did was I started to learn how to give back, and my interest was what I was doing. So I didn't look at it as a pastoral route. I looked at it more as a community leadership route, and that's what I wanted to do. So I went, when I graduated, divorce went through. I was like, you know what? Let me stay. Let's talk about that Walk It Out recovery. Okay. Because we want to make sure we don't run out of time. Okay. I want to be able to talk about that. So how would somebody get involved in that? They could go on my website. It's www.walkitoutrecoveryservices.org. They could email me at robertdiaz@walkitoutrecoveryservices.org. Or they can go on my Facebook page, which is Walk It Out Recovery Services. They can go, we have a lot of different services. It's a support service, it's not treatment. However, we do referral service, so if a person comes to see me, I am a certified drug and alcohol counselor, and I'm a mental health therapist. Do they have to be from Pennsylvania? They don't, and I'm going to tell you why. Because what I do is I do mobile services, so even in Pennsylvania, it's a support service, so I don't take insurances. I go by a pay rate scale for coaching. I do recovery coaching and mentoring. I do drug prevention in schools. So, you know, we go into schools or different public arenas, and I show a video, I do some music, and then I do some psychoeducation, and I have pamphlets and stuff. And then we do family support services, family interventions, family groups. So it's all support services. We don't get funded by Medicaid or any insurance, but we do it as a pay rate scale or a fee for service. Now, it's because I'm in Pennsylvania, even though I'm in Pennsylvania, it's mobile. So if a person calls me and are interested in my services, then I will meet them where they are. Right. All right. There's no office. It's me meeting you. So that's the mobility. However, if they're not in Pennsylvania and they want to talk to me, they could call me on the phone, or we can do FaceTime, or we can go on Skype, and we could video conference each other and do the support service through the video chatting. And then, so you mentioned that some of the things you do is you actually go out to where homeless people are. Yes. Drug addicts are. Yeah. So that way you could help, I guess, minister to them? Yeah, so part of Walk It Out is Walk It Out Ministries, which is where it started from, where through my Christian rap, I evangelized the gospel, and at the same time, I'm involved with other ministries that are doing homeless outreach, who are doing, you know, for my part, is more speaking the gospel, but then also talking about drug addiction. And my motto is there's hope for the hopeless. So when I'm helping those, feeding those people, I'm speaking to them about the word of God. And I'm speaking to them about the transformation that God can give a person in redemption through Christ and through my music as well. So that's the ministry. Walk It Out Recovery Services is a small business where now we're talking about reaching those who are still sick and suffering from addiction, mental illness, all addictions. It doesn't matter. I'm here to support you and walk with you as your coach. Now, if your level of care is higher, I'm not going to tell you, okay, I'll work with you. No, I'm going to refer you to an outpatient treatment, to a detox if it's necessary, to a hospital if it's necessary. But then I'm going to be there not only for before to help you through that process, but then I'm after, because you always need an aftercare plan. So then you could come and talk with me. The other thing that I'm offering for free, though, in that area in the Berks County is a Spanish bilingual support service. You know, un grupo de apoyo de la familia, to help them to understand what is codependency. How do I work with my son or my daughter or my husband who's in addiction, and how do I know I'm enabling them, right? A place for them to come and chit-chat, you know, talk about some stuff, right? And I'm giving that out to the community. So I have different places in the Reading area right now. I'll be meeting with the Berks Council of Churches, because I want to then reach out to the church community, because the church community, a lot of them don't understand the brain disease of addiction. See, I'm fortunate, right? I have the moral side and the brain disease side. So for me, addiction is a dis-ease of the brain, because it changes the chemistry of the brain. But there's also a moral issue. So my thing is to educate.
Now you mentioned a lot about your rapping, right?
Yeah.
All right, we only got a few minutes left, right? And you actually mentioned that you could freestyle.
I mean, you know,
right?
No beat,
no nothing.
No beat, no nothing. 16
right,
bars.
Kick something.
All right, oh man, I'm not as young as I used to be, so I'll kick this. You can't find relief for living a fast life, selling drugs, gang banging, street thugging up all night. Police cars chasing, crazies racing while you're driving and ducking, your homeboys blazing. Headed for disaster, shouts of laughter overpowered the crowd trying to stop you. For being mad with a tangle, pimp style strangled across the street. Two B-boys dancing to the drummer's beat. Too late, car explodes hitting the front gate. Loud boom so profound, people standing around, curious at what just happened with no smile but a frown on every face. With shock and amazement, a deadly arrangement, all involved dead on the pavement, I can't entertain it.
All right. So with that being said, right, I would thank you for showing up.
No doubt, no doubt.
Hit them again where they can find you.
Okay, but real quick, many are battered and bruised, so confused, real life struggles and substance abuse. I'm going to tell you right now, there's hope for the hopeless. It's R. Diaz, Walk It Out Recovery Services.org. And there's also Robbie Newborn, 2C5.17 @gmail.com. I love y'all. Come on.
And with that, I'm going to sign off the way I always sign off. I'll tell y'all, never, ever, ever be silent. You talk back right here on Backtalk with Cripple3030. We would like to thank you for watching Backtalk with Cripple3030. For more information, please go to our website where you can catch our past episodes and our affiliated shows.